All right, so I just put a few quick things together about some of the projects that I've worked on previously, a couple of things that I'm still working on, and then I'll kind of tell you how those things are sort of coming together in the work that's currently going on in my lab. So this is some of the work that I've done with Texas A&M Kingsville, some things that I'm still working on from this research. I'm glad that Dr. Barnes sort of gave everybody a little bit of an intro to some invasive species ecology sort of information, and talked a little bit about pathways for invasion and those sorts of things. A lot of this research on invasive brown tree snakes was done to assess the pathways through which this species could enter different areas. Okay, so this particular project, I worked very, very closely with U.S. military, very, very closely with USDA, APHIS Wildlife Services, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service through, like I said, Texas A&M Kingsville, but have continued this research quite a bit here at Texas Tech as well, asking a few new questions and discussing some different things. So just a really quick background on brown tree snakes. This is Boiga irregularis. They are a very high-profile invasive species. I'm sure most of you have probably heard of them before. They're invasive on the island of Guam. They're native to that particular area of the country, or very close to it, but mostly native to Australia and native to Papua New Guinea and islands in that region. They invaded the island of Guam near the end of World War II, came over on supposedly a military shipment near the end of World War II as a hitchhiker. Apparently, or the data suggest that it was just one individual, potentially just a few or a small handful of individuals that came over from the island of Guam, or from Australia to the island of Guam during that time. And due to the ecology of this species and the ecology of other species on the island and the lack of adaptability of the species on the island to snakes, because there are no other snakes on the island of Guam other than a very, very small 10-inch long blind snake that most people don't even consider a snake. It's usually like that, like more of a worm. So when brown tree snakes came to the island of Guam, they filled this sort of empty niche that no other species on that island was really filling at the time. They're predatory species, and so they were able to prey upon all of the other species there, mostly birds, but also bats and lizards and mammals and all other sorts of reptile species, insects as well. Okay, so they're a generalist predator. So we know quite a bit about the ecology of this species now. They've been very heavily studied since this invasion became known to the world. Okay, so what we didn't know, at least at the start of this study about this species, was their potential to move to other areas. And because Guam is an area that houses a large military base for the United States, we were asking questions, or began asking questions about how the military and transfers and shipments from the military to the continental U.S. and to other areas of the world might enhance the ability of this species to move to other locations, because they are a hitchhiker species. When I say they are a hitchhiker species, I mean they are a known moving species. Okay, so this map sort of exhibits the area of invasion as well as some of the native area for the species. So here we have our Australia and New Guinea, and Guam way up there in the middle of nowhere. So this is just exhibiting that Guam is actually sort of a tourist area for people interested in items and information about World War II. They do actually get a lot of tourists from Japan and from other areas in the Pacific as well. So what I was trying to do with this particular research study is to identify locations within the continental US that receive the most shipments from the island of Guam. Because we have that military base there, we have a lot of household goods transfer from that island. Okay, everybody not only sending mail back to their families, but people transferring from one location to another, one military base to another. So they're transferring whole households worth of items. This species and the ecology of this species is that it is very, very secretive. They're a very long, thin snake species. They're very easily able to hide in very, very tiny areas. On Guam, although most people in the general public don't know it, these snakes live in their houses. They live in their couches, they live in their cars, and their washing machines, and all over the place, okay? They are there. I can guarantee you that they are there, and most people's homes that I actually went into and helped with some of the searches during my fieldwork time would guarantee to me that they weren't there. And I could go in their house and find 5 or 6 snakes. So they're not difficult to find if you're looking for them, and they are very secretive, okay? So most people don't even notice them. So when we're transferring large shipments from this island to other locations, there is a very high potential that we could be transferring this invasive species, okay? There are some known areas in the continental US that have received brown tree snakes via shipment. Some of them have received brown tree snakes alive upon landing. So one brown tree snake actually, well, didn't make it, but made it on a plane, I guess, all the way to Anchorage, Alaska. Didn't survive that trip, but got in the wheel well of a plane, and the plane landed in Alaska, and then they found the snake there. We have found live snakes in places like McAllister, Oklahoma. Once a plane landed there, and opening up the boxes from that particular shipment, live snake was found, or a live snake was found in one of those boxes. So McAllister, Oklahoma, Corpus Christi, Texas, there are areas here that have gotten live brown tree snakes. So what this map shows is all of the locations that receive shipments from the island of Guam over the course of a year. So this large red dot over here is Long Beach, California. They receive almost 3 times as many shipments as the second highest shipping location in the continental US. Okay? Extreme numbers of shipments from Guam go to Long Beach. And these are multiple large cargo containers worth of household goods. So when you see that the number can actually get above the amount of days in a year, those are the numbers of large cargo shipments that they are receiving. Okay? So all of these places get shipments from Guam. Now they may come in different ports, but these are the final locations where those shipments are opened up. Okay, so a big part of what I did for this research was doing a habitat suitability assessment, climatic suitability assessment for brown tree snakes, trying to look at, okay, if these shipments were opened in these areas of the continental US, where could these snakes survive? So this is a map of one of the climatic suitability assessments that we did. I'm not allowed to show you all of the research results due to being under contract still for this particular project. But this is one of the early on initial maps looking at potential climatic suitability for this species. So we were able to really sort of parse this out as far as the area where these snakes might have potentially suitable climate and the numbers of shipments being received in all these different areas. That gives us an idea of what's called the propagule pressure for this particular species in any of these zones of the US, which is basically the potential for this invasive to be successful in any of those areas. So this project, like I said, is still going through the contractual process for us to define the high-risk areas, but basically what we're doing is defining these high-risk zones for the continental US, and then trying to get out all of the possible educational materials that we can to those areas. We talked to the port managers, we talked to the military bases in those areas. We try to get them to implement different types of inspections in order to check out all of the shipments that they're receiving from Guam, to inspect for brown tree snakes. We give them rapid response contact information so that we can try to prevent any individuals from moving if they do show up alive, okay? So this is brown tree snake stuff that I have worked on. And my interest in habitat suitability, climatic suitability, and working with all different sorts of species sort of spread from there. And I'm currently working on this other project with the University of Tennessee collaboratively here with Texas Tech and our NRM department on a habitat suitability modeling assessment for a large-scale construction project in eastern Tennessee. And basically the way this came about was that the Tennessee Department of Transportation wants to build a major highway through the middle of the Cherokee National Forest. So I came on as an ecologist with some background information on how to do a lot of this modeling. And basically we are assessing every possible species in that area, both natives and invasives, to try to see how the building of this new development of this highway system might potentially affect those species and the ecology of the area. So we started working on all sorts of different habitat data collection and assessing every possible route of this potential highway that they're going to build through the Cherokee National Forest. And you can see the numbers go up and up. These are just some of the possible routes. This was an early map. They were up to over 37 routes, potential routes now. So we have to assess every single one in order to try to tell them which might be the best route for that particular ecosystem and the way that it affects both native and invasive species in that area. So this area has major problems. This is why they're building this brand new highway. There's already a roadway there, but it's having huge issues with people trying to traverse that roadway. Basically, they have over a 200-foot straight vertical rock wall on one side and a drop down into the Ocoee River on the other side. The Ocoee River is a known whitewater rafting river, so it's very dangerous on a very small 2-lane road that used to be a mining road. Okay. So we're putting together habitat suitability models for all sorts of different species. And again, I apologize, this is the only species that I am allowed to show due to contractual agreements. And surprisingly, it's American black bear, which you would think that they would be more concerned about. But this is basically a similar habitat sort of what we're working on with the brown tree snake. We take all of the ecological data for that species and compare it to what is available on the landscape. Okay, so areas that have darker green, dots spotted through the landscape, those are areas of higher potential habitat suitability. The interesting thing about American black bear is that they have a very widespread habitat suitability because they have such a large home range. Okay, so we also tried to assess what might happen to these species if they were to cross the roadway. So we looked at how those species move and how the roadway might affect them for every potential route of the road. So we did this for native and invasive species in the area. This is another species that I'm allowed to show because it's all over the place. White-footed mouse versus American black bear. And basically this shows us that this particular species has a very high risk area at this zone of the potential new route of the highway compared to how they use habitat in that area. Okay. So ultimately, we end up looking at the potential route, and over that entire route, this is a little hard to see here, every single pixel has sort of some value, some gradient value for how much risk that species is incurring at that particular area of the route, okay? So this is what our black bear map looks like, and you can tell that there are a few red zones that are high-risk zones for that particular species. So basically, sorry, this slide takes a few minutes. We took habitat information, we're taking information about how every species moves, danger of crossing the particular roadway, and trying to identify least impact alignments for all of the species in that area. Basically what we've found so far is that what they have listed as alternative number 4 has the least potential risk for all of the species that we've assessed so far, which is 111 different types of species, everything from large mammals to birds to a few bat species, some endangered snail species, lizards, snakes, and a few extra invasives and things along those lines. So we were all across the board with these models. And that was based upon what U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, USDA, and TxDOT required us to examine or assess. So we were able to point out where along this roadway they need to do different types of planning in order to try to accommodate certain species, or areas along the roadway that they need to do further assessments for the invasives in that particular area and do specific types of management for invasives in those exact zones. So this is a really new and different type of thing. Taking habitat suitability modeling, taking information about the ecology of a species and informing planning, using science to inform planning. It's something that we always talk about doing, that everybody really wants to do, and it's still sort of a new and groundbreaking thing for a lot of organizations. So this is basically how we're working on doing that for a large-scale construction project here in the U.S. Oops, sorry. That's okay.